The Council's challenge. The Galactic Preservation Summit had never seen anything quite like this before. In the Grand Crystal Chamber floating above the planet Nexera 7, representatives from 247 different species gathered to showcase their methods of environmental restoration. The chamber itself was a marvel, walls made of living crystal that shifted colors with the emotions of those inside, showing everything from calm blues to excited oranges. 15-year-old Maya Chen stood in the preparation area, her hands dirty with soil. Unlike every other presenter who had come before her, she hadn't brought holographic displays, atmospheric processors, or gene modification chambers. Instead, she had brought three things: a worn leather bag full of seeds, a small metal watering can that belonged to her grandmother, and a wooden box filled with rich, dark earth soil. The other species watched her setup with barely concealed amusement. The Zephrons, beings made of flowing energy who could reshape entire planets with their thoughts, whispered among themselves. The Krothos, massive rock-like creatures who could terraform worlds in weeks using their biological processes, rumbled with what might have been laughter. Even the small Pixari, who looked like floating jellyfish with rainbow tentacles, seemed to giggle as they bobbed in their anti-gravity bubbles. Maya tried to ignore them. She focused on carefully arranging her materials on the display platform, just like her grandmother had taught her in their small rooftop garden back in San Francisco. But it was hard to block out the voices, especially when her translator kept picking up their comments. "Primitive dirt pusher," one of the Zephrons said. "Humans still use biological seeds?" "How quaint," added a Krothos elder. Dr. Vexer, the summit coordinator, was a Zentari, a species that looked like walking praying mantises covered in silver scales. He approached Maya's station with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, his large compound eyes reflecting multiple images of her humble setup. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice translated into English with a slight mechanical tone. "I must inform you that your presentation slot has been reduced from 30 minutes to 10. The Council feels that, well, to be frank, traditional gardening methods are not what this summit is about. We're here to discuss rapid planetary restoration, not hobby farming." Maya felt her cheeks burning. She had traveled 3 months through space to get here, leaving Earth for the first time in her life. The human delegation had fought hard to get her this spot, arguing that Earth's recent environmental recovery deserved recognition. And now she was being dismissed before she even started. 10 minutes is fine, she said quietly, though her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Dr. Vexer seemed surprised by her calm response. "Very well. You'll present after the Morphidian Collective demonstrates their nanoswarm reforestation technique. They can convert a desert into a rainforest in approximately 14 hours. As he walked away, Maya heard more whispers from the audience. She saw human ambassador Rodriguez in the observation section, his face tight with concern. He had vouched for her, put his reputation on the line. If she failed here, it would be another mark against humanity in the galactic community. The Morphidians went before her, and their presentation was spectacular. They released billions of microscopic machines that assembled synthetic trees in real time, creating a miniature forest on the demonstration platform in just minutes. The trees looked perfect, geometrically precise, efficiently designed, optimized for maximum oxygen production. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. Or at least, what counted as applause among species with tentacles, energy fields, and clicking mandibles. Then it was Maya's turn. The girl who talked to seeds. She stepped onto the platform, carrying her leather seed bag. The crystal walls had shifted to a skeptical purple color, reflecting the audience's doubts. Maya took a deep breath, remembering her grandmother's words, "A garden doesn't need to be big to be important. It just needs to be loved." "My name is Maya Chen," she began, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. "I'm here to talk about something my grandmother taught me. She called it the old way, but I think it's also the future way." She reached into her bag and pulled out a handful of seeds. They were just ordinary sunflower seeds, the kind you could buy at any garden store on Earth. But in this chamber of advanced technology, they looked impossibly primitive. "These are seeds," she said, stating the obvious. I know most of you think seeds are outdated technology. Slow. Inefficient. Random. Why wait months for a plant to grow when you can 3D print one in minutes, right? Some aliens nodded. Others looked bored. Maya knelt down and began pressing seeds into the soil she had brought, her movements careful and deliberate. But here's what I learned from my grandmother, and what humanity learned the hard way when we almost destroyed our planet. Fast doesn't always mean good. Efficient doesn't always mean alive. She poured a small amount of water over the seeds, the sound of liquid hitting soil oddly loud in the quiet chamber. When Earth was dying, we tried everything. We built atmospheric processors. We created synthetic forests. We used nanomachines and genetic engineering and every piece of technology we could invent. And some of it helped. But do you know what saved us in the end? Maya stood up, brushing dirt from her hands. Patience. Understanding. And working with nature instead of trying to replace it. A Zephyron representative spoke up, his energy form pulsing with annoyance. We don't have centuries to restore dead planets. Species are dying. Ecosystems are collapsing. Your patient methods would doom billions. You're right, Maya said, surprising everyone. If you're starting from nothing, if you need emergency intervention, then yes, use your technology. Build your synthetic forests. Deploy your nanoswarms. But here's what we discovered, those solutions don't last. She pulled out her datapad, displaying images of Earth's recovery. 30 years ago, Earth was dying. We built synthetic forests all over the continents. Within 5 years, 90% of them had failed. The artificial trees didn't interact properly with the soil. They didn't support insect life. They didn't create the complex relationships that real ecosystems need. They were decorations, not forests. The purple crystal walls shifted to a more neutral gray. Some aliens were leaning forward now, paying attention. Then my grandmother and people like her started something small. Community gardens. Seed banks. Traditional farming. They taught us to understand plants again, not just manufacture them. They showed us that a real forest isn't just trees, it's fungi and insects and bacteria and worms and birds and mammals all working together in ways so complex that even our best computers can't fully model them. Maya walked to the edge of the platform, looking out at the assembly. I can't make a forest appear in 14 hours. But I can teach you how to grow a forest that will still be alive in 1,000 years. I can show you how to work with a planet's existing biology instead of replacing it. I can explain why the inefficient process of natural growth creates resilient ecosystems that adapt and survive. She pulled out more images, before and after shots of Earth locations where traditional methods had been combined with careful technology. Rivers that ran clear again. Forests that hummed with insect life. Cities surrounded by green spaces that cleaned air naturally and provided food for local communities. The Morphidians showed you how to build trees, Maya said. I'm offering to teach you how to grow forests. There's a difference, and that difference matters. Dr. Vexer stood up, his forearms now gesturing with interest. You said you discovered these methods the hard way. What did you mean? Maya nodded. 40 years ago, humanity built the largest artificial ecosystem in history on the continent of Australia. It cost trillions. It used the most advanced technology available. Within 10 years, it was completely dead. Nothing grew there anymore, not even weeds. We had sterilized the soil so thoroughly with our efficient methods that it couldn't support any life at all. She paused, letting that sink in. My grandmother was part of the recovery team that spent 20 years bringing that land back to life. She did it with seeds, with compost, with understanding. She did it slowly, one handful of soil at a time. And now? That land is a nature preserve that supports thousands of species. The crystal walls had shifted to yellow now, curiosity mixed with interest. So yes, Maya continued, my methods are slow. They require patience, knowledge, and respect for natural processes. But they work. And they keep working, generation after generation, without constant maintenance or energy input. A real forest doesn't need repairs. It heals itself. It adapts. It survives. She held up her bag of seeds one more time. These seeds represent 4 billion years of evolution. They contain information and capabilities that we're only beginning to understand. They don't need instruction manuals or spare parts. They just need soil, water, sun, and time. And the wisdom to work with them instead of against them. An elderly Krothos stood, his rocky form grinding slightly as he moved. Human child, your passion is evident. But you've given us philosophy and history. Can you demonstrate actual technique? Can you show us something concrete? Maya smiled for the first time since stepping on the platform. Actually, yes. But you'll have to give me those 10 minutes that Dr. Vexer promised. And you'll have to watch carefully, because what I'm about to show you is something no technology in this galaxy can replicate. She knelt back down next to her soil, pulling out a small, wilted plant from her bag, a tomato seedling that looked like it was about to die. The audience murmured in confusion. Was she going to show them a dead plant? This seedling is sick, Maya explained. It's been infected with root rot, a common plant disease. The typical solution would be fungicides or genetic modification. But my grandmother taught me a different way. She taught me how to listen. And with that simple statement, Maya Chen began demonstrating something that would change the Galactic Preservation Summit forever, the ancient human art of understanding what plants need, not through scanners or sensors, but through observation, patience, and a connection to living things that technology had never quite managed to replicate. The crystal walls slowly shifted to gold, the color of fascination. The lesson begins. Maya's fingers moved through the soil with practiced ease, feeling the texture, testing the moisture level, assessing the structure. To the assembled aliens, it looked like she was just playing in the dirt. But Ambassador Rodriguez, watching from the human section, smiled. He had seen Maya work before. He knew what was coming. The first lesson my grandmother taught me, Maya said, still focused on her work, is that you can't fix a plant by only looking at the plant. You have to understand the entire system. She pulled the sick tomato seedling from its pot, gently shaking off the old soil to expose the roots. They were brown and mushy, clear signs of disease. Several aliens made sounds of disgust. See these roots? They're rotting because the soil they were in had poor drainage and the wrong kind of bacteria. Most people would throw this plant away and start over. Or use chemicals to kill the disease. But both of those solutions miss the point. Maya began mixing her earth soil with the old contaminated soil from the pot, adding what looked like dead plant material and something else the aliens couldn't identify. Her hands moved with confidence, blending the components carefully. A young Pixari drifted closer, its rainbow tentacles waving with curiosity. What are you adding to the soil? Compost, decomposed organic matter. And this, Maya held up a handful of what looked like white threads, is mycelium. Fungal networks that form relationships with plant roots. These fungi will outcompete the harmful bacteria, protect the roots, and help the plant absorb nutrients more efficiently. She repotted the seedling in the new mixture, her movements gentle and deliberate. Now watch. Nothing happened. The audience waited. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The bored expression started returning. Patience, Maya said softly. This is the hardest lesson. Real healing takes time. Dr. Vexer clicked his mandibles in frustration. Miss Chen, we have a schedule to maintain. This demonstration? Wait, interrupted the elderly Krothos who had spoken before. His massive rocky hand gestured for silence. Look at the leaves. Everyone focused on the tomato seedling. The drooping leaves were slowly beginning to lift. It was subtle, barely noticeable at first. But over the next 2 minutes, the change became undeniable. The plant was recovering, responding to the improved soil conditions, the beneficial fungi establishing protective relationships with its roots. Impossible, whispered a Zephron. No treatment works that quickly without technological enhancement. Maya stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. That's the thing. This is technology. It's just not the kind you're used to. My grandmother called it appropriate technology, using the tools that nature has already developed over billions of years. She walked to her display pad, bringing up more images. After humanity nearly destroyed Earth, we had to learn humility. We had to accept that sometimes the old ways were better than our new inventions. Not because they were magical or mystical, but because they were tested. They were proven. They had survived countless generations. The truth about extinction. A holographic image appeared above Maya's platform, Earth as it looked 50 years ago. The continents were brown and gray, oceans tinged with algae blooms, atmosphere hazy with pollution. This was Earth at its worst, Maya said quietly. 90% of insect species extinct. 70% of plant species gone. Oceans dying. Temperature rising. My grandmother was 20 years old when this was taken. She told me about watching the last wild monarch butterflies disappear from her hometown. The image shifted to show desperate attempts at salvation, massive machines, synthetic forests, atmospheric processors. We tried to science our way out of the problem we'd scienced our way into. And some of it helped, don't misunderstand me. Technology saved billions of lives. But it couldn't save the planet. Not alone. Another shift. The images now showed small gardens, community projects, people working in soil with their hands. This is what turned it around. Not the big projects. These small efforts, replicated millions of times. People learning to grow food again. Understanding soil health. Protecting seed varieties. Working with nature instead of trying to control it. Maya's voice grew stronger, more passionate. My grandmother had a saying, you can't download the knowledge of how to grow a garden. You have to get your hands dirty. And she was right. All our databases and tutorials couldn't teach people what they learned by actually working with plants, making mistakes, trying again, understanding the rhythm of seasons. A Morphidian representative, the same species that had presented the nanoswarm, spoke up. But our technology can restore damaged ecosystems in months, not decades. Surely speed matters when species are going extinct? It does, Maya agreed. And I'm not saying abandon your technology. I'm saying combine it with wisdom. Use your nanoswarms to stabilize soil. Use your genetic engineering to strengthen species. But don't replace natural processes. Enhance them. Support them. Work with them. She knelt back down by her seedling, which was continuing to recover visibly. This tomato plant knows how to heal itself. It's been doing it for millions of years. All I did was create the right conditions. That's the role humans learn to play, not controllers, not creators, but facilitators. The challenge issued. The crystal walls had fully shifted to gold now, with streaks of green, fascination mixed with respect. But one species remained unconvinced. The Vorlon representative stood, his crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. The Vorlons were known as the greatest terraformers in the galaxy, capable of making planets habitable in years rather than centuries. Human child, the Vorlon said, his voice like chimes. Your story is touching. Your grandmother sounds wise. But we operate on a galactic scale. We have 17 dying planets currently under restoration. Traditional gardening cannot save them. Maya met his gaze steadily. You're right. Traditional gardening alone can't save 17 planets. But tell me, how many of your restored planets are still thriving 20 years after you leave? Silence. The Vorlon's light patterns flickered with what might have been discomfort. I looked up your statistics before I came here, Maya continued. Of the 43 planets your species has terraformed in the last century, 29 have experienced significant ecosystem collapse within 15 years. You have to keep going back, keep fixing, keep maintaining. They never become truly self-sustaining. Those are acceptable losses given the scale, the Vorlon began. Acceptable? Maya's voice carried an edge now. Those are entire biospheres. Each collapse represents trillions of organisms dying. And it happens because your approach doesn't build resilient ecosystems. It builds house of cards that collapse the moment something unexpected happens. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species defended the Vorlon approach. Others seemed intrigued by Maya's criticism. The crystal walls flashed multiple colors: argument, interest, concern, curiosity. Dr. Vexer raised his forearms for silence. This is a serious accusation, Miss Chen. Do you have evidence? Maya pulled up more data on her display. Here are Earth's restoration statistics. Areas restored using combined traditional modern methods show 93% ecosystem stability over 30 years. Areas restored using only advanced technology show 47% stability. The difference is resilience. She showed detailed comparisons, graphs, images, biological diversity indices. When you use only technology, you create systems that depend on that technology. When you combine technology with natural processes, you create systems that adapt, evolve, and survive. A small Pixari drifted right up to Maya, its large eyes studying her face. You speak of your grandmother with great love. Is she here? Maya's expression softened. She died 2 years ago. She was 93 years old and spent her last day working in her garden, planting seeds she knew she'd never see grow. She said it was important to plant for the future, even when you wouldn't be there to see it. The Pixari's tentacles drooped in sympathy. This is wisdom we have forgotten. My species lives for 800 years. We stopped thinking about what comes after us long ago. That's the problem, Maya said gently. When you can 3D print a forest overnight, you forget that real forests take centuries to mature. When you can terraform a planet in years, you forget that stable ecosystems need time to develop complexity. Speed becomes more important than sustainability. She turned back to her tomato plant, which was now standing upright, its leaves green and healthy. In the time we've been talking, this plant has healed itself. Not because I did anything special, but because I created the conditions for its natural processes to work. That's what humanity learned to do for Earth. We stopped trying to force solutions and started facilitating healing. The proposal. Ambassador Rodriguez stood up in the observation section, his voice carrying across the chamber. Maya, perhaps you should tell them about the Earth Recovery Initiative. Maya nodded. 3 years ago, Earth officially joined the Galactic Council. One of our conditions for joining was that we wanted to share what we learned about ecosystem restoration. Not to make money or gain power, but because we nearly lost everything and we don't want other planets to suffer the same way. She pulled up new images, teams of humans working alongside various alien species on different worlds. We've started small programs on 6 planets so far. We teach traditional methods combined with appropriate technology. We help establish seed banks. We train local populations in sustainable practices. And we work slowly, building understanding rather than just building structures. How long do these programs take? Asked a skeptical Krothos. 20 to 30 years per planet for full ecosystem restoration, Maya answered honestly. But within 5 years, you see measurable improvement. Within 10, you have self-sustaining systems. And after 30 years, you have a living world that doesn't need constant maintenance. The Vorlon representative spoke again, his tone less certain now. This is slower than our methods. Yes, Maya agreed. But it's also permanent. Your methods are like putting a band-aid on a wound that needs surgery. Our methods are like teaching the body to heal itself. It takes longer, but the results last. Dr. Vexer stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the golden glow of the crystal walls. Miss Chen, what exactly are you proposing? Maya took a deep breath. This was the moment she'd been preparing for. I'm proposing that the Galactic Council establish a traditional knowledge integration program. Combine the technological capabilities of advanced species with the patient, nature-based approaches that Earth learned. Use nanoswarms to stabilize soil, then plant real seeds. Use atmospheric processors for emergency intervention, then allow natural cycles to take over. Use genetic engineering to boost biodiversity, then let evolution do its work. She walked to the center of the platform, her young face serious but hopeful. Most importantly, I'm proposing that we slow down. Stop treating planets like projects to be completed and start treating them like gardens to be tended. Because the difference between a project and a garden is that projects end. Gardens continue. They grow. They change. They live. The chamber fell silent. Even the translator devices seemed to pause, as if the gravity of her words needed time to settle. Finally, the elderly Krothos spoke. Human child, you remind me of why my species first developed consciousness. We were not always technological beings. Once, billions of years ago, we were simple organisms in soil, not unlike your plants. We grew slowly. We learned patience. We forgot that wisdom in our rush to master the cosmos. He turned to address the assembly. I propose we listen to this child. Not because her methods are better than ours, but because her methods complement ours. We have forgotten that fast and effective are not the same as lasting and alive. One by one, other species began nodding or making their equivalent gestures of agreement. The Pixari bobbed enthusiastically. Even the Vorland's lights shifted to a more agreeable pattern. Dr. Vexer clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This would require significant changes to our protocols. It would mean longer timelines, more resources dedicated to education rather than immediate action. Yes, Maya said simply. But it would also mean planets that survive. Ecosystems that thrive. Species that have futures, not just emergency interventions. Seeds for tomorrow. As the session concluded, something unprecedented happened. Instead of the usual formal dismissal, aliens from dozens of species approached Maya's platform. They wanted to touch the soil. They wanted to see the seeds. They wanted to understand what this human child had shown them. The Vorlon representative came last, his crystalline form still refracting light beautifully. I wish to apologize, he said, his chiming voice quiet. My species has restored 43 planets. You are correct that 29 have failed. I knew these statistics, but I told myself they were acceptable. I did not want to admit that our methods were incomplete. Maya smiled at him. My grandmother used to say that admitting you're wrong is the first step toward getting it right. Earth had to admit we were wrong about a lot of things before we could heal our planet. The Vorlon reached out one crystalline hand, and Maya placed a single sunflower seed in his palm. This seed contains more complexity than our best computers can model, he said wonderingly. How did we forget that? Because you're not gardeners, Maya said gently. You're engineers. And that's okay. The galaxy needs engineers. But it also needs gardeners. Maybe it's time we worked together. As the summit concluded, Dr. Vexer announced that Maya's proposal would be formally debated in the next council session. Ambassador Rodriguez was beaming. The other human delegates were celebrating quietly. But Maya just stood by her recovered tomato plant, running her fingers through the soil one more time. A young Pixari drifted over, its tentacles waving shyly. Miss Maya, could you teach me about seeds? My planet is dying, and I think maybe we need to learn to be patient. Maya smiled, the same smile her grandmother used to have when a student showed genuine interest. I'd be happy to teach you. But first, let me give you something. She reached into her leather bag and pulled out a small packet of seeds. These are cosmos flowers. They're hardy, they grow fast enough that you won't lose patience, and they're beautiful. Plant them when you get home. Water them. Watch them grow. And while you're watching, think about what it means to nurture something instead of building it. The Pixari clutched the seed packet like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Maybe, in a way, it was. As Maya packed up her supplies, the soil, the watering can, the leather bag that had been her grandmother's, she thought about all the seeds that were now spreading across the galaxy. Not just the literal seeds she'd given away, but the seeds of ideas. The understanding that slow could be strong. That old could be valuable. That patience could be powerful. She looked at her tomato plant, thriving in its pot of earth soil mixed with beneficial fungi. It would never match the geometric perfection of the Morphidian synthetic trees. It would never grow as fast as the Vorlon terraforming projects. But it would live. It would produce fruit. It would drop seeds that would grow new plants. It would continue, long after the machines had been turned off and the nanoswarms had been recalled. That night, in her quarters on the space station, Maya wrote in her journal, an old habit her grandmother had taught her. She wrote about the presentation, the debates, the small victories. But mostly, she wrote about hope. "Grandmother," she wrote, "today I taught the galaxy about patience. I think you would have been proud. They laughed at your methods at first, just like people laughed at you back on Earth. But by the end, they understood. They saw that what you taught me wasn't just about gardening. It was about respect. For life. For time. For the wisdom of doing things slowly and doing them right." She closed the journal and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there were 6 planets where humans and aliens were working together, combining technology with tradition, building ecosystems that would last. Soon there would be more. The council was listening. The galaxy was learning. All because a 15-year-old girl had stood in front of the most advanced civilizations in the cosmos and reminded them of something they'd forgotten, that the most sophisticated technology in the universe was still a seed, and the most powerful force in the cosmos was still patience. Maya smiled, thinking of her grandmother's last words to her. "Plant seeds, Maya. Even when you can't see the future. Even when you don't know if they'll grow. Plant them anyway. Someone will thank you someday." Today, the galaxy had thanked her. Tomorrow, she would keep planting. Because that's what gardeners do. The end. From HFY Nexus Archives, where humanity's patience becomes the galaxy's hope.